everyone, welcome to Watch It Paint. In this video we are going to be returning to Clayface. Now I have already painted this miniature on the channel and it's a great place for you to start painting your Batman Gotham City Chronicles miniatures with. If you're brand new to painting, start here guys, start here. This is a really simple model. Do check out the other video which uses the dry brushing technique. Now I think that was incredibly quick and easy to paint, but it did involve knowing how to dry brush, which is not a difficult technique to learn and it's one I highly recommend. But if you're thinking that's a technique I need to learn, this might be a faster, easier way to do it. So in this video we're going to be using Citadel Color's new contrast range. So we're going to start off with the primer. You need to give it a good shake, couple of minutes I would say at the very least. This is going to be the Wraith Bone one, which gives a warmer look to the miniature at the end. For this one, I'm actually going to hold the miniature in my hand. I've got a nice glove on. I'm also wearing a mask so I don't breathe this in. And then I'm going to apply light sprays of this primer all over the miniature. The reason I'm holding it in my hand is there's quite a few angles to get to this miniature. So I need to do it from above and below and sort of all around. So I'm just starting, each spray is just slightly off the side of the miniature and then quickly moving over the rest of the miniature. That's just making sure the can doesn't, splurt or get any big blobs all over it. And it gives a better even coverage with no risk to that. So I'm just going to make sure, cover the whole thing everywhere I want, nice and lightly. So do make sure you do find some gloves to wear. I'm actually not using a latex one. I see a lot of people wear latex ones, but the environment and all. Once you finish, flip that can upside down, give it a squirt out until no more paint comes out and it runs clear, and that's just going to clear the nozzle and stop it jabbing with dry paint. This is how he looks after I've evenly covered him with that Wraith Bone, and this is the example of the dry brush version that I did when I first started painting Batman. I'm fairly happy with how he came out. There's a few bits where you can sort of see the dry brushing technique, sort of a few little layers of it that stand out quite badly, but other than that, pretty much spot on with how I wanted. So for this one, I'm going to use the Citadel Color Contrast Wildwood, and I think this is going to be a pretty much identical match to how I painted the first Clayface that I had. Now, I did heavily consider using Agorus Dunes color, which is that lighter brown, that yellowy brown, and I feel like some people might like that to look more of a clayey color, and I considered that the first time I did it. So it's up to you guys. For this, I'm just going to try and make it so it's as comparable to the dry brushed version that I did as I can. I'm also going to be applying this contrast paint using my Red Grass Games #2 brush. It's quite a fat brush, slurps up a lot of contrast. Then I've also got a holder for my Citadel paints. This is from Game Envy. I'll leave a link in the description below. Just stops these pots falling over, which it didn't take me long. How many you guys watch the channel? I don't paint with Citadel paints, and I've spilt them already, so a lesson to be learned there. Now I'm just going to apply this Wildwood, and I'm going to go for the one thick coat, just that technique. So I'm going to slurp up lots on my brush and just apply it evenly but thickly all over this miniature. And I can already see, you can see it on the top half pulling into those recesses and leaving it lighter on the raised parts of his clay. Now, I think as I started off, the miniature you can see he's already, slurping away from the raised bits at the top. I think he's looking fantastic as I'm painting this. However, I do sort of lose track of where I've done, and I've switched brushes now because that was just taking too long for me. So I've gone for a cheap brush, and I was also he's got a lot of detail in him, and it was sort of, messing my nice fine brush up, so I've switched to a very cheap brush and I'm just splatting it all over now, and that's how he looks once he's dry. I think I could have done a better job with the contrast. I think I put too much on, like you saw it was drying on his face and his chest, and then I went back and did a bit more and tried to even it out, and I think just ended up doing 2 coats, and there's a bit pooled there as well. So I think it's more just take a little bit more time with that and it would come out well, because his backs come out well, which I only did that 1 coat because it's the last bit I did. And yeah, although I in my head I was only applying 1 coat, I went over some areas sort of twice, so basically ended up doing 2 coats by mistake. But it's not bad. It's not bad. The back's better than the front, and I think, yeah, if I just, that took me like 4 minutes. Oh, and then he's slurped up some of that contrast and got a little bit drunk on it. So chill your beans, let's not fall over again. So to rectify that, I am going to do a little bit of dry brushing, but I am going to reiterate, I think if I'd taken a little bit more time and a little bit more care and really just applied that 1 coat consistently over the entire miniature, I would not be needing to do this bit. I think I'm just now going to dry brush on some leather brown, which matches the sort of lighter area on his back, and I'm just going to dry brush this over all the raised bits. And what we're going to see is I'm actually just making it match that, like his bum and his back. Whoa, whoa, a little bit unsteady on his feet still. And then after that, we'll have a look at him. And I think that light dry brushing has really brought him back to how I would expect the contrast to sort of finish. You see his front matches a lot more like the back, which I didn't touch with the dry brushing. So I think that's more like it. I'm going to mix in a little bit of matte white now. So I think I got that to about the level I would expect from the contrast, and I think you do need to do a little bit of dry brushing, but you could have stopped there. I think that would have taken about 10 minutes, and you could have just left it where it was completely sort of finished just using contrast. But I'm going to mix in some matte white, about 50-50, and just give this little guy some highlights and just make him a little bit more interesting. So I think with the contrast paints, you can save a bunch of time so far and dodge having to do any dry brushing. But if you do want to take it a little bit further, I want to make it look a bit more like the first version I did and really just compare how long they took. I'm also going to use what's it called? Island Yellow by Citadel, again, clipping it in my safety net. And this is just to apply some glow to his eyes. So I'm going to basically get on his pupils, but in the artwork it does show his eyes sort of glowing, so I'm not too worried about this contrast paint sort of spilling over his eyeballs, his eye sockets a little bit, giving a little bit of a glow effect similar to what I did the first time around painting Clayface. I'm basically just trying to do exactly the same, just using a base of contrast paints this time to see what sort of time difference and quality difference we might have by the end of the miniature. For the base, I'm going to copy the original one, Necromancer Cloak, using a very cheap brush. And with this time, I've learned a little bit better on doing these bases. And I think super heavily water down this layer and just leave it with one coat. So this is sort of 50% to 75% water, really thin layer, and that gives really nice uneven consistency sort of in the pavement texture. I'm going to splash on some Fur Brown by Army Painter, as well as a bit of Crusted Sore here and there. So I didn't do this in the first video, so this is where I'm going with the basing for Batman Gotham City Chronicles at the moment. I'm sort of just making it a bit haphazard, a few different colours mixed together, just make that ground look a bit more realistic, especially with that initial base colour of that Necromancer Cloak that's just really thin, so some white still shows through, some pools, some goes dark and some's a bit lighter. It's just a mixture. I think it looks more uneven, like a floor would. And then I'm not even really sure what I'm going for with a Crusted Sore, a bit of blood that's on the floor or just darker terracotta mud. Not really sure, and I don't really mind. I just think it's a really quick, effective way of making the base look a lot more interesting. So just applying this randomly. After that, I'm going to use Army Painter's Dark Tone. That's the black wash, and I'm just going to put one thin layer all over the entire base and really just try and get that to pool in the recesses. So I'm trying to just keep it nice and even with no pooling on the flat surfaces. I just want all those cracks to pop back out and really make the floor stand out without obscuring any of the colors that I've just painted down. And now I don't mind darkening them down with the dark tone, especially around where the two colors meet. It's really going to blend them nicely. It's going to darken it all down, and you're just going to be left with dark brown, dark red, dark gray, and it's going to look pretty good for the couple of minutes it takes. Now this is taking longer than the first Clayface video I did, which I just painted, I think, in Crusted Sore, some dark red if I recall correctly. But this is only a couple of minutes. But when I'm going for trying to compare the two videos, do bear this in mind, and let's try and remember to knock off a couple of minutes extra, because adding two different colours is going to take a little bit more time, if not just getting the paints in and out of the little pots. And then once that base is dry, I'm going to just add a final layer of matte black all around the rim of the base, and that, as I nearly always do, and just really bring the focus back to the base and the miniature that's on it instead of the outside of it. I'm going to add in some pupils, I guess, or just really aim for those sockets now with Babe Blonde. Just give him really, really bright yellow eyes, as I think it's more or less depicted in the artwork. Then I realised that was way too bold a pupil, so I've now got a load of water on my brush, and I'm just going to basically allow that to slurp into the paint and pool in his eye socket. So I'm going to do the same on his other eye. So that's just going to pool in his eye socket, and it's sort of mostly water, so it looks super bright there, but it's gonna dry quite thin and toned down and just look quite nice. And now it's not got anywhere near the glow of the first version I did, but I like it. I think I prefer it. So here we are finished, guys, and this is the two side-by-side comparisons. Left is obviously the dry brush version. I went quite a lot brighter, and then right is the contrast version. Now the dry brush version, the first version I did take me 40 minutes, and the contrast version, including that little bit of dry brushing I needed to do, including the base underneath, 22 minutes. So you're talking about a 50% speed increasement. Now you can look at this and judge for yourselves on how you feel, whether you think the left is better or the right is better. Do bear in mind it is subjective and we all have different views, but I think the overall consensus is the left is better in that, well, it took twice as long, so you'd hope it would be twice as good. I'm not sure it is twice as good. Now, I think with this particular model, you can't go wrong. Either copy the original video or this video, you're going to get a nice looking miniature very, very, very quickly. But I do like being able to have compared the two, and obviously let us know in the comments below what you think. Now, after I finished painting this, I did, as you see, put it on Instagram to get people's opinions of it, and then I thought, you know what, let's go back and try adding a little bit of a dry brush and see what we can get out of the contrast. Now we are talking about one level of higher highlights. It took me another 2 minutes to add this, but I've already made them a lot brighter with just a couple more minutes, another, you know, mixture of that leather brown and sort of matte white, probably about 75% matte white, but I could have kept going higher and higher like the original video, and I think I'd have got him spot on. So each time, obviously, it's going to add a couple of minutes, but you're still going to be finished. I think I could get exactly the same as the original version, probably in 30 minutes. So you skim off 25% at that, and that's been my hypothesis on these contrast paints, that they do make painting faster at the cost of some quality, quite possibly. Let us know in the comments below what you think. Which would you prefer to do? Which will you be doing? And as always, guys, you've watched it. Now go and paint it. See you again next week. Any microphone now we do. Cooking with gas helps if I plug it in. After that, I'm going to mix in a little bit of matte white with it and just lighten up that. No, I'm not. Bear with me. It's not what I've just done.